There comes a moment in the life of every chosen one when everything around them goes still, but something within them begins to tremble. Not from fear, but from recognition. It is the trembling of a soul that senses a shift, a holy unrest, a silent stirring that whispers, "You are standing on the edge of something heaven has prepared in secret." You don't see it yet. There's no announcement, no angel in the sky or fire on the mountain, but in your spirit, the air is changing. What you're feeling isn't confusion, it's proximity. Your breakthrough is closer than you think. This is Chosen One's sanctuary, where hidden things are brought into the light and spiritual patterns are decoded. And if you've been led here today, it's not by accident. It means you've entered a prophetic season, a divine waiting room where heaven is preparing a shift you cannot yet see. Scripture confirms this over and over. Before Joseph was elevated, he was forgotten in prison. Before David wore the crown, he was hunted in the wilderness. And before Jesus stepped into resurrection, there was silence in the grave. The pattern is clear. Before every breakthrough, there are signs. Not loud ones, subtle ones. Spiritual signals heaven sends to those it has chosen, if only they know how to recognize them. That's what we're here to uncover. Because you've been praying, waiting, watching. But what if God has already started answering? Not with fulfillment, but with signs? What if the warfare you're facing, the restlessness in your spirit, the sudden changes in your circle, are not coincidences, but confirmations? Stay with me to the end of this message. What you're about to hear may explain why you felt forgotten, why doors have stayed shut, and why your heart has been quietly bracing for something you couldn't name. This isn't just encouragement, it's revelation. And if you're ready, let's begin unveiling the 12 signs that appear when your breakthrough is near. Starting with one most people miss, the sacred moment when God begins to separate you from everything that cannot carry your future. Divine separation begins. Before a breakthrough descends, God begins to prune, not publicly, not noisily, but with surgical silence. He starts removing people, habits, and patterns that cannot survive where He is taking you. And if you are chosen, you will feel the tearing. Not because you are being punished, but because you are being prepared. Divine separation is the sacred violence of heaven, a gentle rupture that cuts ties with what once felt necessary. What used to fit no longer rests comfortably. Friendships dry up. Opportunities vanish. Relationships you swore were forever begin to fracture without warning. And in the natural, it feels like loss. But in the spirit, it is alignment. This is how God makes room. Before Joseph stepped into Pharaoh's court, he was stripped of his coat, his family, his freedom. But what looked like rejection was redirection. God was removing the familiar to preserve the prophetic. Because if Joseph had remained with his brothers, he would have died a shepherd, not risen as a ruler. The separation was the sign. For the chosen ones, this pruning is not a punishment. It is a sign of impending promotion. God only trims what He intends to grow. So when you feel abandoned, when doors shut and people disappear, understand this. The Spirit is clearing the soil for something greater. It is holy disruption. But beware. If you fight to cling to what God is removing, you will delay what heaven is releasing. Cling to what is leaving, and you may miss what is coming. Let the roots be pulled. Let the pruning finish its work. Your future cannot be built on the fragments of your past. This is the first sign. The quiet subtraction, the sacred distancing. It is the whisper of destiny in the language of detachment. And if you can trust it, your breakthrough will follow the severing. When God begins to separate, He is not taking something from you. He is making space for what He has already prepared. Escalating spiritual warfare. When your breakthrough is near, the atmosphere around your life begins to shift, not in calm, in conflict. What you face is not random chaos. It is precision warfare. The enemy doesn't attack what doesn't threaten him. If you feel the pressure increasing, the storms multiplying, the resistance thickening, it is not because you are off course. It is because you are dangerously close to crossing into destiny. Before Jesus began His ministry, He was led by the Spirit into the wilderness and attacked relentlessly. Not because He was weak, but because He was full of purpose, full of divine identity, and hell could smell it. If you are being fought, it is because something inside you terrifies the darkness. Spiritual warfare before breakthrough is not a sign of failure. It is confirmation of calling. But many misread the battle. They mistake the resistance for a closed door, and they turn back. They withdraw their prayers. They silence their praise. And just like that, the enemy wins without having to touch their destiny. Because he didn't defeat them. He just exhausted them. But you, chosen one, must endure. You must recognize the pattern. The warfare is loudest when the wall is thinnest. The enemy knows what you're about to touch. So he surrounds you with confusion, fatigue, emotional volatility. But that is your sign. The louder the warfare, the closer the door. Do not let this battle make you forget your identity. You are not being overwhelmed. You are being opposed. And there is a difference. One implies weakness. The other confirms assignment. Let this warfare prophesy to you. Let it speak what your eyes cannot yet see. That you are on the edge of something so divine. The forces of darkness have risen to try and stop what heaven has already written. The attacks are not proof that you are losing. They are evidence that your breakthrough is near. Unexplainable restlessness in your current life. There comes a time in the life of the chosen when the very things that once felt like comfort begin to feel like confinement. You may still be in the same house, around the same people, doing the same work, but something inside you no longer fits. What once felt like peace now feels like pressure. This is not rebellion. It is revelation. God is unsettling your spirit because your current environment can no longer contain the next chapter of your calling. Moses grew up with luxury in Pharaoh's palace. He had rank, access, education. But at some point, the palace walls began to feel like a prison. He saw the suffering of his people and could no longer remain silent. The restlessness grew. The internal friction became unbearable. And what did he do? He stepped out into the unknown, into the wilderness, into destiny. God uses discomfort to summon movement, not because you are ungrateful, but because you are being prepared. The Spirit begins to disturb your sense of normal so that you no longer settle for survival when heaven has declared elevation. That job that once brought joy now drains you. That relationship that once felt secure now feels stagnant. Your prayers shift. Your hunger deepens. And you begin to long for something that doesn't yet have a name. This is how God moves the chosen. He provokes dissatisfaction, not to punish you, but to propel you. If he didn't stir your nest, you would never learn to fly. So he allows the walls to tighten, the routines to lose flavor, the old rhythms to fall flat, until you can no longer pretend you belong where you've already outgrown. But here is the warning. If you ignore this restlessness, you risk missing your moment. What you feel is not random frustration. It is divine agitation. It is the Spirit whispering, "There is more. Come up higher." When comfort begins to crumble, don't cling to it. Let it unravel. For in the ashes of the familiar, God builds the altar of the new. Sudden pull toward prayer or fasting. One of the clearest signs that a breakthrough is drawing near is not external change, but internal fire. A sudden, holy pull to pray. A spiritual hunger that rises without explanation. You may be going about your day when the urge to seek God crashes into your schedule like a wave. This is not routine religion. It is divine summons. Your spirit is being called into the secret place because something is about to shift. This is what happened to Daniel. When he read in the scrolls that the time for Israel's captivity was nearly over, he didn't wait for a prophet. He fell to his knees. He fasted. He wept. He prayed with urgency. Why? Because he understood something the modern church often forgets. Prophecy without prayer is potential without power. When your breakthrough is near, heaven invites you to partner in the birthing. God doesn't move apart from you. He moves through you. And he will awaken your spirit when it's time to stand in the gap. If you feel that pull to pray in the early hours, to turn off distractions, to cry out with intensity, respond to it. Don't suppress it. Don't delay it. Because prayer is not preparation. It is participation. The answers are already being shaped in the realm of the unseen, and your intercession is what releases them into the now. But many ignore this sign. They feel the stirring, but silence it with entertainment, busyness, or logic. And when the moment of visitation passes, they wonder why nothing changed. Beloved, heaven never forces intimacy. It invites it. And when the Spirit calls, it means something sacred is within reach. Do not harden your heart. Your breakthrough does not begin with evidence. It begins with obedience. If God is waking you to pray, it's because something is already moving in the Spirit, and your voice is the final key. Divine silence increases. One of the most painful and confusing signs that your breakthrough is near is when heaven goes quiet. You pray, but there's no answer. You worship, but feel no presence. You ask, but receive no direction. The God who once flooded your life with signs and confirmations now speaks only through silence. But silence does not mean abandonment. In the life of the chosen, silence is strategy. Before Jesus raised Lazarus, he waited. He heard the cries, he saw the tears, but he stayed silent. Not because he didn't care, but because he was positioning the miracle for maximum glory. His delay was divine. His silence was not absence, it was set up. When God goes quiet in your life, it's not because he left. It's because he is working behind the curtain. Like a master builder, he lays foundation before revealing the structure. And if he answered every prayer immediately, you would never learn to walk by faith. The silence before breakthrough is sacred. It breaks pride. It deepens trust. It tests whether you want his hand or his heart. And it prepares you to steward the blessing without worshiping the blessing itself. But many misinterpret this silence. They assume God is displeased or distant. They fall into doubt. They stop praying. They give up just before the curtain rises. Don't make that mistake. The silence is not a stop. It's a signal. God hides when he is finishing what only he can build. Trust the silence. It means something holy is in process. Temptation to settle for less intensifies. When you are near your breakthrough, the enemy doesn't always come with attack. Sometimes, he comes with alternatives, offers that look good, opportunities that seem right, but they are not from God. They are designed to make you settle. This was the strategy he used on Jesus in the wilderness. Just before Jesus stepped into public ministry, Satan offered him a shortcut: glory without the cross, power without process, a crown without suffering. It sounded appealing, but it was counterfeit. When your breakthrough is close, the counterfeit will always show up before the covenant. A relationship that mimics what you prayed for, but lacks God's breath. A job that pays well, but pulls you out of your purpose. An open door that leads to distraction instead of destiny. And it will feel so tempting to say yes, especially when you've been waiting, when you're tired, when you've seen no movement. That's when the enemy slips in, not to steal your blessing, but to convince you to trade it. But what God has for you is specific. It will not require compromise. It will not demand that you shrink your calling or silence your convictions. It will come wrapped in peace, not pressure. Clarity, not confusion. Alignment, not anxiety. If you settle, you may secure comfort, but you will miss covenant. And no counterfeit can satisfy what was shaped for your spirit. Wait, even when it hurts, even when it costs. Because what God has written cannot be overwritten, unless you surrender it for something less. And when the temptation feels strongest, that's your sign. The real thing is almost here. Resistance from family or trusted circles. There is a unique pain reserved for the chosen ones. The sting of being misunderstood, criticized, or resisted by the very people who were supposed to love them most. It is one thing to be attacked by strangers. It is another to be doubted by your own. But this too is a sign. Before David ever faced Goliath, he faced the scorn of his elder brother. When he spoke of the giant, Eliab burned with anger, accusing him of arrogance and ambition. But David wasn't being arrogant. He was being awakened. Something in his spirit recognized that the battlefield was the birthplace of his next level. And the enemy used his own blood to try to shut him down. This is how the enemy moves when your breakthrough is near. He doesn't only use demonic forces. He uses familiar faces, those closest to you who don't understand the weight you carry, those who see your growth as rebellion, your boldness as pride, your faith as delusion. Why? Because they cannot discern what God has placed in you. But you must remember, being chosen often means being lonely. God will allow certain voices to turn against you so that you learn to hear His above all others. And if you allow the resistance of others to rewrite your obedience, you will forfeit what was meant to be yours. The people around you may not see what is coming, but heaven does. And if your spirit is stirring with vision, don't wait for permission from those who cannot hear what God whispered only to you. The rejection is not the end. It is the womb. Every giant slayer is first misunderstood by their own tribe. Stand firm. Stay focused. You're not being rejected. You're being revealed. Doubts about God's promises increase. When the promise feels overdue, doubt starts to whisper. It questions the voice you once trusted. It magnifies the delays. It reminds you of what hasn't happened and convinces you that maybe, just maybe, God changed His mind. This is not coincidence. It is calculated. The enemy knows your breakthrough is near, so he sends doubt as a final assault. This is what Sarah experienced. God promised her a child, yet the years passed like dust through her fingers. Her hope grew weary. Her faith thinned out. And one day, doubt whispered an idea that seemed logical. Give Hagar to Abraham. Help the promise along. Create a substitute when the original seemed stalled. And with that one act, Sarah's impatience opened the door to conflict and delay that would echo for generations. Doubt doesn't always show up as rebellion. Sometimes it wears the robe of reason. It tries to protect you from disappointment by lowering your expectations. It offers alternatives, not because you are wicked, but because you are weary. But doubt, when left unchecked, can rob you of what God already scheduled. You are not called to walk by evidence. You are called to walk by faith. And faith doesn't always feel strong. It just refuses to stop standing. The enemy will show you silence and call it abandonment. He will show you time and call it denial. But the promises of God are not suggestions. They are covenants, sealed in blood, anchored in heaven. So when doubt starts to knock, do not open the door. Speak what God spoke. Declare what He promised. Let your faith rise louder than your questions. Because right before birth, the pain increases. And if the pressure is growing, so is the promise. Repeated distractions or temptations appear. When a chosen one is on the brink of breakthrough, the battlefield rarely looks like what you expect. It isn't always filled with giants or storms. Sometimes it's subtle, quiet, wrapped in good things that pull you slightly off course. The enemy knows he doesn't need to destroy you to delay you. He only needs to distract you. These distractions come dressed in relevance, a business idea that sounds right but isn't spirit-led, a connection that appears promising but slowly erodes your focus, invitations to comfort when God is calling you to consecration. Even harmless indulgences can become deadly if they take root at the wrong time. And the enemy times them perfectly, right before your season is set to shift. Think of Nehemiah. As he rebuilt the wall, his enemies didn't first attack with weapons. They tried to lure him down with conversation. "Come, let us meet in the valley," they said. But Nehemiah discerned the trap and replied, "I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down." That's the posture of the chosen ones when distractions rise, a holy refusal to come down from the assignment. Then come temptations, more dangerous than distractions because they appeal to your flesh, not your schedule. Joseph, destined for the palace, was seduced by Potiphar's wife. It was not a test of desire, it was a test of destiny. Had he fallen, his entire future would have collapsed under shame. His gift would have gone with him into darkness, but he fled. And in fleeing, he preserved the favor of God. Distractions make you busy. Temptations aim to make you bound. Both are sent as final traps before the door opens. If you don't recognize them, you may trade permanent purpose for temporary pleasure. Chosen one, do not be deceived. The warfare may not always look like attack. Sometimes it will look like opportunity. Sometimes it will feel like relief. But ask yourself, is this pulling me closer to what God said, or pulling me subtly away? If it costs your focus, it may cost your future. Sudden spiritual dreams, visions, or confirmations. When the realm of the Spirit begins to speak more loudly than your surroundings, something divine is approaching. You begin to see dreams that feel more like warnings than wanderings. Visions visit you unexpectedly, in prayer, in silence, even in your sleep. Scripture, songs, and prophetic words seem to echo each other. You feel pursued, not by fear, but by divine reminders. This is not superstition. This is God confirming in the Spirit what has not yet appeared in the natural. Joel 2:28 declares that in the last days, God will pour out His Spirit on all flesh. Sons and daughters will prophesy. Old men will dream dreams, and young men will see visions. These aren't random images. They are divine downloads, encoded for the chosen ones. If you're sensing increased spiritual activity, it means heaven is trying to get your attention. Before Peter preached at Pentecost, he saw a vision of a sheet descending from heaven. Before Paul was called to Macedonia, he dreamed of a man pleading for help. God speaks in symbols when words are too small for what He's about to do. But you must be sensitive. These signs do not scream. They whisper. They don't force. They invite. If your spirit is too noisy, too distracted, too tired, you may miss them. Or worse, dismiss them. Keep a journal beside your bed. Listen when your heart is stirred for no reason. Pay attention when the same message finds you 3 different ways in one day. These are not coincidences. They are divine confirmations that your breakthrough is no longer on the way. It is in motion. When heaven wants to move you, it speaks first. Let the signs speak. Let them prepare you for what is already unfolding. Surprising peace despite chaos. There is a peculiar peace that falls upon the chosen ones right before their breakthrough. Not the peace that comes after victory, but the kind that shows up in the middle of the storm. It makes no sense in the natural. Your circumstances are still hard. Your questions are still unanswered. But deep within, something settles. You're no longer frantic. You're no longer striving. You are still. This is not denial. It is divine assurance. Philippians 4:7 calls it the peace that surpasses all understanding. It doesn't align with logic, but it aligns with spirit. It is heaven's seal, a signature of God that says, I'm in this. And when you feel it, don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it as fatigue. That inner stillness is often the final confirmation that the battle has shifted in the spirit realm, and the manifestation is on its way. Noah felt it when the rains finally stopped and the ark found rest. Ruth felt it when she chose to stay with Naomi, even before Boaz saw her. Jesus walked in it when He slept through the storm while others panicked. That peace wasn't ignorance. It was intimacy, a knowing that God is not just aware. He is already ahead. But be warned, chaos may still swirl around you. The enemy may still try to provoke fear, stir noise, send voices. That's how you know it's real peace. Because it does not depend on what's around you. It flows from who is within you. And if you feel that quiet, holy calm, do not overlook it. It is not complacency. It is your spirit's confirmation that breakthrough is already unfolding. In a world that worships signs and results, the greatest evidence that you are near the promise may be that you finally stopped running and started resting. Increased compassion or generosity. When your breakthrough is close, your heart starts to shift. It softens. You begin to feel a burden for others, a desire to give, a hunger to bless, even when you haven't yet received what you've been asking for. This is not coincidence. It is divine conditioning. God is preparing you to carry what He's about to release. The chosen ones are never blessed for themselves alone. They are vessels, carriers of kingdom wealth, wisdom, healing, and influence. And before God pours more into your hands, He checks the posture of your heart. Do you still cling tightly to what you have? Or have you become a river instead of a reservoir? Hannah promised God she would give her son back if he would open her womb. He answered her because he saw that her breakthrough would not end with her. It would flow into Israel's future through Samuel. The blessing found her because it could pass through her. If you feel more generous, more tender, more willing to serve, even when you're still waiting, do not suppress it. That compassion is proof that your heart is being enlarged to handle what's coming. But beware, selfishness can delay what God wants to multiply. If the blessing will only build your comfort, but not God's kingdom, He may withhold it, not out of cruelty, but mercy. Let the increase begin in your heart before it touches your hands. When compassion rises, it is not weakness. It is the Spirit of God shaping your soul to reflect His own, so that when the breakthrough arrives, it doesn't just change your life, it changes everyone around you. And that is the final sign. The softening before the sending, the generosity before the overflow. Breakthrough is never just about blessing, it is about becoming. What God brings to you is always tied to what He is building within you. And if you are feeling the weight of these signs, the shaking, the silence, the shift, it is because you are not just standing at the edge of a new season. You are standing at the edge of a new self. The journey of the chosen ones has never been linear. It bends through valleys. It pauses in wildernesses. It stretches under pressure. But at every turn, it is marked by the fingerprints of a God who sees the end from the beginning. A God who does not waste delay, who speaks in symbols, who hides keys inside discomfort. Throughout Scripture, God never just told His people the promise. He prepared them for it. And preparation always comes wrapped in mystery. He let Joseph be forgotten so that favor would be undeniable. He let Moses feel unqualified so that dependence would be unshakable. He let David be chased so that worship would be birthed in the caves, not in the palace. So what if this waiting, this restlessness, this refining is not a sign of absence, but a sign of nearness? What if heaven doesn't announce breakthroughs with lightning, but with separation, with stillness, with the ache to pray when nothing makes sense? This is the paradox of divine movement. The more hidden it seems, the more holy it often is. And if you feel forgotten, let me remind you. Even silence has a voice, even delay has a direction, and even the wilderness is under God's command. Here is your prophetic seal today. You are not behind. You are not abandoned. You are being positioned, shaped not just to receive a breakthrough, but to carry it with the weight of glory it deserves. If this message has spoken to your spirit, I invite you to walk deeper with us here at Chosen One's Sanctuary. Like this video, share it with someone whose breakthrough may be closer than they know, and subscribe to stay connected to more Spirit-led revelations. And before you go, tell us in the comments, which of these signs have you seen in your own life? What has God been stirring in your spirit? Your testimony may be the confirmation someone else has been praying for. You are not here by accident. You are chosen, and the shift has already begun.